Okay, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Enterprise Exchange event. We're really excited to be hosted today by Teesside University. We've got a great lineup of speakers for you all. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I'm Rob Edwards. I'm head of events at EUK. So I'll be giving you an initial welcome just about some of the things that are coming up at EUK. And then I will pass over to our hosts and on to the speakers. So I'm going to share my screen and hope that you can see this. Okay, so someone can give me a thumbs up that they can see that. Excellent, thank you. Okay, you saw all of this. So, welcome everybody. Okay, so we have some other events which you might be interested in. I know that it's a very busy time at the moment, but I hope that you'll be able to find a bit of time to join us. Our next one that's coming up is specifically for enterprise practitioners, and that's an online event that takes place sort of hourly sessions through the week of the 3rd of June, and hosted by our Practitioner Pathway Network. It's a very informal Chatham House rules gathering where we just want to find out what the current challenges are, what EUK could be doing more of, and it's a chance as well to share your experiences and things that are working well for you as well with other colleagues. So please do check out the events page on the website for more information about that. We have a session, an event organised at Trinity College Dublin on the 12th of June, if anyone is around and able to join us in person there, looking at what enterprise and entrepreneurship education in Ireland and beyond looks like. We also have a writing retreat that we organise in partnership with the Research in Enterprise Education Special Interest Group and the Family Business Special Interest Group at ISB. And that's in person at Birmingham University. And again, that's an opportunity just to have a little bit of headspace to be able to focus on getting that article across the line, getting that report finished. It's a really supportive and encouraging atmosphere. So I hope that you'll like to have a look at that. And then, of course, looking forward to September, we have our annual conference, IEC, and we're in Belfast this year, hosted by Queen's University, together with Visit Belfast. So the call for session proposals is currently open. That finishes on the 31st of May. So you have a few more days if you'd like to propose a session to run the conference, and registration is open as well. And the early bird rates run until the 28th of June. So there's still an opportunity to get your place booked for that as well. But it's the first time that IEC has been outside of mainland UK, so we're very excited about it. And we've got some brilliant things lined up. So I do hope you can join us for that. We also have various other development and ways that you can become involved in EUK, which I'm sure a lot of you know already. The EUK Fellowship is a way of recognising the work that you're currently doing in enterprise education. It's based on a project that you then submit, and that then gets judged and verified. And again, it's a great opportunity to just sort of mark your achievement and what you're currently doing in enterprise education. We'll share the slides with you afterwards, so you have all these links as well. We currently have vacancies as well on a couple of our committees, if anyone would like to get more involved in the running of the UK. And that's on our Nominations and Representation Committee and also on our Governance Committee. And as I mentioned, the event that we're organising through that week, our new pathway network groups have been set up, and they're based around our 3 pathways: academic, practitioner, and influencer. So again, that's sort of focusing much more on the sections, I suppose, within our membership. And opportunity there as well to share best practice, things that are working well, and some of the challenges. We have funding opportunities coming down the line. So the Impact Fund, the window for applications for that is just closed, but that will be open again next spring. So this is a bit of advance warning. The Impact Fund is there to fund bigger bids, bigger proposals that you think will have a huge impact on enterprise education in terms of the field. So it can be a single organisation bid, and the award for that is up to £7,500. If you're working with other organisations, then that can go up to 10,000 as well. So we're looking for specific research that will have a much wider impact on the community. So again, that's an ideal opportunity to give something a bit of a kickstart, particularly when funds are a bit of a challenge for everybody at the moment. And we also have the Richard Beresford Bursary, which is for specifically personal development. So those are awards of up to £500, and that can cover conference attendance. It can cover perhaps going on a course or something, courses and training. And the application window for that will open in the autumn, so around sort of September, October time. And again, another opportunity just to be able to kickstart something that you might have been thinking about for a while, but not had the necessary funds. So do sign up to the mailing list if you're not already on it, because that's where we'll let you know when those application windows are open. And then finally, you'll already have seen our code of conduct that we send out with our joining instructions for delegates. We want all of our events, whether they're online, whether they're in person, to be a safe space for everybody and for everybody to feel comfortable. So please do respect other attendees and follow the schedule. Please do participate as much as you feel able to, because we want today to be an interactive session as well once we've heard from our presenters. And there's obviously opportunity towards the end of the session as well for breakouts and for a Q&A session as well. So if you have any concerns during the session itself, then you can obviously send me a direct message on here on Zoom, or you can drop me an email as well, because I'll check that periodically. So that's rob@enterprise.ac.uk. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I will now pass over to Bemi, who's going to stop my sharing. Yeah,
thank you so very much, Rob, and thanks everybody for joining us today. On behalf of Teesside University International Business School, we want to welcome you to today's session. Without wasting our time, I'm going to quickly hand over to the head of department, Leadership Management and Human Resource for Teesside University International Business School, to do a quick introduction of the key themes for today's session. Over to you, Dr. Jill Owens.
Thank you, Bemi. Thank you very much for asking me to do this. As you know, it's something that I feel incredibly passionate about. And hello to everybody. So Bemi and I often have very interesting conversations about innovation, creativity, enterprise, social enterprise. I am an accidental academic and have a strong history of social enterprises and being involved in helping a variety of people across all sectors of society. I took part in a podcast last week and I was asked if I knew what my purpose was, and I said I believe strongly that I was put on this earth to help and support other people, regardless of what that was. Innovation for me is so incredibly important. We wouldn't be sat here today if it was not for those creative and innovative minds who have put us in a place where we are using technology to meet, whereas we would have previously all jumped on a train and arrived somewhere and had those discussions. We wouldn't be living the lives that we live today if it wasn't for innovation. You know, the fact that I put my washer on this morning and I will arrive home this evening and the clothes will be washed, dried and barely need ironing, as opposed to me watching my mum have wash day with her old twin tub washing machine, where it completely took out a day in the life of Mother Evans. So innovation is a great driver of how we live, but also of improving the economy and contributing to economy. And I did a little bit of research, and the European Commission has quoted that there are 40 million people globally employed in social enterprise, with an additional 100 million people globally involved in volunteering for those social enterprises. And they are all about making use of the innovation and the creativity that we have and capturing that for social goals, improving incomes, improving housing, for example. So it's something that I really strongly feel passionately about. I do have an interest in a housing organisation that helps people who potentially would otherwise be homeless. You know, it's so important, and we're using innovation in how we develop housing quickly to get those people where they are warm, dry, safe, and have access to washing facilities. And that is, I've got a very good friend who has a container organisation, and we are using innovation in converting shipping containers into temporary housing for people like that. So we need to capture that, because, sorry to break the news here, but none of us are getting out of this alive. So it's not about us as individuals, it's about us as collectives. We need to do something. The people that we are working with, the students that we are working with, we are instilling the fact that with those, and I know that other institutions are doing that, it's the next generations that are coming that we need to capture their innovation, capture their creativity, and help it forge ideas for the good of others. You know, we just have to look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and we look at poverty, hunger. We've got to capture all of that. We've got to be a collective. It can't just be about me, my, or I. So this is something I do feel very passionately about, and I'd be really keen to pick up conversations with colleagues after this event if there's anything that you do that we think we can work together as a collective. So for me, collect and foster that innovation and creativity for the good of others is the final message. So thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you just briefly this morning. I hope the rest of the day goes well. I've got to, Bemi knows me, I'm triple booked throughout the day. So it was great to be able to join you. And I do hope that collectively you come together today, share those ideas, and can take some things forward.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Jill, for your time and for that quick introduction. Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of your day. I understand you're very busy.
Bye, folks.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will continue by introducing our keynote speaker for today's session, Dr. Alex Ope. Thank you for creating this time to join us. Dr. Alex is the Deputy Pro-Vice Chancellor at Northumbria University. He's also the Associate Professor of Business Ethics and the co-chair for United Nations PRME Climate and Environmental Working Group. Thank you, Dr. Alex, for joining today's session. Over to you, Doctor.
Thanks, Bemi, and thanks everyone, and thanks, Jill, for teeing me up, because today I'm going to talk about social enterprise in the SDGs. So, and I don't think you knew that, but that's pretty good. So that's really nice to kind of see the two going together. So I'm just going to share my screen because I've got a few slides, and then I'll do a bit of an introduction to me and why I'm here and all of that kind of stuff, if that's okay. So there we go. You can see my screen. So thank you, Bemi. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me to come and speak to you a little bit today. Just to build on what Bemi was saying, so Associate Prof, working in responsible business, Deputy PVC education, and these are important, I'll tell you why in a minute. Long involvement with UN Prime, so the Principles of Responsible Management Education, hold some leadership positions in that organisation. I work a lot with the Chartered Association of Business School, AACSB, one of our large global accreditors. And really, I'm telling you all of this not to say, hey, look how good and impressive I am, but to tell you actually that I see my job as an educator, as a sustainability person, prior to becoming an educator, as infiltrating and influencing the sector as much as I can, to try to ensure that we are teaching and educating and preparing our students and our leaders and our graduates for the big challenges they have to face tomorrow. So my strategy has always been to infiltrate and then to ensure that we embed sustainability in everything that we do. I worked in private and public sector before becoming an academic. So I'm a bit like Jill was saying, accidental academic. Academia was my second career. And I think that's kind of interesting to know as well, because it gives me a bit of a more base understanding of how businesses work. I founded my own business myself, a sustainability consultancy called One Planet Management, which I still keep and do a little bit of work with now and then. But that's much more hard work than being an academic, so don't do as much as I used to. but I've been around the kind of sustainable business space for 20 odd years now, for quite some time. I'm not a enterprise educator. I'm not an entrepreneurship academic. I am a sustainability focused academic working on sustainable strategies as well. And my educational focus, I guess, is RME, responsible management education. But as I've kind of moved through my career in the last kind of five to 10 years or so, I guess, I see the two things as being completely and utterly aligned: responsible management education and enterprise education. They're one and two halves of the same coin, you know. In order to responsibly to teach our students to become to lead sustainable businesses and run companies the best way, we need to teach them the kind of pedagogies, the kind of techniques, the kind of ways of working that entrepreneurship education gives us. So for me, the two things are absolutely aligned. And my job at the moment is we spend a lot of time at Northumbria embedding sustainable development through our business courses. We need a more strategic approach to embedding enterprise education through our courses, and the two, I think, will match up very nicely. So that's the kind of background of where I'm kind of coming from. So not being an enterprise educator and not being an academic based in social enterprise, I want to be careful not to step on anybody's toes here. But it's always difficult when you ask these kind of things because you don't know who the audience is. So I've assumed a bit of no knowledge, although I know a lot of you will have more. So what I'm going to do is just a very brief overview of social enterprise, where it sits, or the definition of it, if you like, and a bit of an introduction to the Sustainable Development Goals. I want to talk a bit about the importance of innovation and how that's aligned to the SDGs, how we need to be better at strategic supporting of social enterprises, and how I guess us as educators and universities can deal with that. Some of the latest trends that I'm seeing in social enterprise, and a bit about how the SDGs are a way of guiding innovation. So I really wanted to bring my sustainability kind of expertise to the social enterprise space today. So I think most of you guys will understand where social enterprises sit, and, you know, in the kind of scale of businesses, if you like. And on the one hand, we've got our traditional pure profit style businesses. On the other hand, we've got our charities, and social enterprise sit in that kind of space in the middle, sometimes uncomfortable space in the middle. And I think a lot of people, and you guys will know this, still don't really understand what social enterprise is. They think it means an NGO or a charity, where it's not, is it? It's a business, whether it's for profit or not for profit. It's a business. And I think that sometimes blurs the lines a little bit, because we're seeing these organizations that are traditional businesses who are getting aligned with sustainability and SDGs. And we're thinking, great, look at those, they're fantastic businesses. We're seeing charities getting involved in kind of social missions. And social enterprises, for me, are that kind of sweet spot in the middle that do both. They do everything, they do all of it. And I think that's why it's really, really interesting that we're starting to focus more on this, and universities and students are focusing more on this kind of middle space in the middle. I think gone are the days where our students come into us and they want to leave and go and work for a company for life in the traditional business. That's what their dads did, and their dads' did, and their grandparents did. They want to start business. They want to innovate. They want to do something a little bit different. So for me, that's why the focus on social entrepreneurship and social enterprises is really different. And I'm doing a lot of work at the moment in the kind of B Corp space, which is really taking off in the northeast of England. We have the most B Corps in the world in the UK at the moment, and the northeast is starting to explode for lots of reasons which we don't understand. But hopefully a bit of research we're doing will help us through that. So you guys know what social enterprise is. Hopefully you'll also understand what the Sustainable Development Goals are, the SDGs. So the SDGs are the 17 interconnected objectives that the UN established in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. They followed up quickly on the coattails of something called the Millennium Development Goals. And essentially, these are every country in the world, every country that's signed up to the United Nations, which is all except for two, get together and agree, look, these are the big areas that we're working on. These are the kind of global challenges that we are facing as a human society. And the idea is that these SDGs will then start to filter through government and through public sector and through private sector and through universities, and everybody will be working in the same direction to solve these global challenges. Great idea in theory, not necessarily actioned as much as you might like in practice. In my daily practice, when I'm working with organizations, and I talk about the SDGs, I still get very blank looks from some very big organizations sometimes. And you're a bit like, really? You know, this is not something that you've come across. And that's lots of different reasons for that. It's a failure of government policy is one of the issues that I have, because the government has to report on a yearly basis to the United Nations how it's supporting the SDGs as a signatory. And you read the reports that the government puts out, and it's like, you know, businesses are all aligning themselves to the SDGs, and you're like, really? Okay. But I find the SDGs a very useful framework to think about when I am working with businesses and students, to understand the kind of impacts that businesses can have to create a positive world. And one of the things I like to do most is when we get our first year undergraduates in, and we get them in a big room, you know, 400 or 500 of them, and we say, look, why are you here? You know, and somebody puts their hands up and says, well, I want to be a CEO. Okay, I want to be a venture capitalist. Someone always says, well, I wanted to do drama, but my dad said do business because they'll get you a job. But then in the end, we kind of say, well, what is business? Business is a way to affect change. Okay, it may be changing, you know, an economy, it may be changing a different product, maybe providing a service, and that change can be positive and negative. And the SDGs give us a framework to understand how business can act towards positive change, and we need our businesses to do that, because we can't achieve any of these goals through government action alone. Business economies have more money, they're more agile, they have more ability to solve these problems. And so we use the SDGs at Northumbria especially as a very focused way of getting our students to understand that they are coming to understand business as a way to change the world and make it a better place, not as a way to kind of go and work and create profit for some shareholders somewhere. So we're very keen on kind of changing their mind from the day they arrive with us. So how does that align to social enterprises? Well, on the left-hand side here are some of the kind of benefits that you'll often see in the literature talking about why you should align yourself to the SDGs and how they can actually work for you as an industry. Things like, I'm not going through them all, but things like enhanced reputation and brand value. So if you pick up, I don't know, I was looking through Greg's, because we work quite closely with Greg's, looking through their corporate reports the other day, and they align it completely with the SDGs. They kind of say, okay, well, this is our mission over here, and that aligns to SDG 1, no poverty. We align our strategy to SDG 17, let's say, you know, partnership or whatever, and they align it completely. And I asked them, well, why do you do that? And they say, well, it gives us a really good way of kind of showing the people that we're not just a bakery company. We're a company that want to help solve poverty a little bit, you know, by giving away some of our food, you know, when it's, you know, that would usually go into a landfill, while it's still good food to eat, into the West End of Newcastle, and selling it almost for nothing. And then we have a debate about whether that's okay from a health and well-being point of view. But anyway, the point is that they use this to kind of, as a way to kind of communicate that they are not just a bakery, that they are trying to change the world a little bit. There are things like access to new markets and opportunities. So you'll find lots of investors and banks nowadays, you know, still stinging from the 2008 financial crisis, where all bankers are bad, you know, desperate to work with organizations that are creating sustainability value, sustainable value, because they can align themselves to that and say, hey, we're a good bank, we're a good company. And so where they've got organizations that are aligned to the SDGs, they can make that argument, to society and say, well, actually, we're a bank, yes, but we're funding these companies that do good work around these SDGs here, and you can see that. There may be things like regulatory compliance. So again, as we move forward and regulations get a bit tighter in terms of especially our environmental regulations, if you're working towards a framework that helps to deal with the SDGs, let's say SDG 13, climate change, climate impact, then as the kind of regulations start to tighten, you'll be ahead of the curve anyway, because you're already trying to kind of address those issues. So there are lots of different reasons why organizations in general and social enterprises as businesses themselves will align themselves to the SDGs. And I like this little conceptual framework on the right here as well that Littlewood and Holt produced in 2018. And they're kind of looking at how the different ways in which social enterprises, and I would say all businesses to some degree, kind of deal with this. And when I'm working with businesses, they always ask me the same question. Do I have to kind of deal with every single SDG? You're like, no, you deal with the ones that are most material to your daily business, if you like. And this kind of conceptual framework is trying to discuss that. So we're showing that, there are those focus contributors who have a particular value chain that they're kind of working with, and they may have a very focused kind of approach to the SDGs, just dealing with a couple of them. Then you have the broad people who try to deal with much more kind of SDGs. Actually, we're going to deal with 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11. And so you can kind of as a organization, develop your strategy to be broad or to be narrow to deal with the SDGs. And I'm going to give you lots of examples today of organizations that are doing just that and how they're kind of using the SDGs as social enterprises to communicate the work they're doing and focus their minds a little bit. Okay, so we talked a bit about innovation and the importance of innovation. And again, for me, innovation should be sustainable innovation. It's about changing companies in order to kind of meet the SDGs and meet those big challenges. And that can be things like driving social change. So driving social change, I guess, is what social enterprises do, creating these solutions that kind of try to deal with these persistent social problems. So enterprises that are trying to address problems such as poverty in ways that other traditional methods may not. Like I said, governments often find it hard to deal with poverty. It's an intangible concept, but businesses can often deal with it a lot quicker and put more money into it and a little bit more kind of investment into that and be a bit more innovative around that. We've got adaptation, so adapting to changing environments. And I guess SDG 13, climate change, is the big one there. Our world is changing and it will continue to change no matter what we do to mitigate climate change. It is changing. You can look out the window today and our climate is very different to maybe where it was 10, 15 years ago. So again, social enterprises are often better to deal with this because they tend to be more agile. They tend to be more innovative in the way that they think. And often they can pivot a little bit more than traditional companies in order to deal with that. And then scaling impact. So again, this is really about partnership for the goals, SDG 17, I guess, and social enterprises coming together as like-minded kind of organizations and like-minded companies to try to kind of partner and deliver a greater impact in what they do. And again, we see that offered a lot more than we do in the kind of traditional business world, I would say. Okay, so what about innovation and social enterprises? So I have to think about this in these 3 ways. There's product innovation, so new products, new services. There's process innovation, so changing the ways that we do things, and a lot of work about circular economy in there, I guess. And the thing I'm more interested in, and I've written about before, is business model innovation. I kind of think, well, for traditional companies, tweaking your products to kind of say, okay, we're going to use a different kind of container for this milk, let's say, and therefore that's going to have less carbon impact and that's going to help save a little bit of carbon down the line. That's one thing, that's great. But actually changing your entire business model, to a more circular business model, to a more kind of a less profit-based business model, for example, that has more kind of impact than changing a single product. So I'm kind of really interested in those businesses, especially businesses that have been set up in one particular way and are trying to innovate and change their business model to a more social enterprise kind of model. I'm interested in how they work together. So I'm going to give you some examples because I think it's always good to talk about companies that are doing good and doing things differently. So Fairphone, I don't know if any of you have come across this company here. They're a company based out of the Netherlands, been around for about 10 years now. And they're a social enterprise focused on creating sustainable, ethical smartphones. I've got a friend who's got one, and it's an Android smartphone, a bit like your Samsung. But the innovation that they have here is you don't have to throw it away every year or every 2 years, don't have to upgrade it because you can upgrade every individual module. So in a couple of years' time, you've got this phone and you're thinking, you know what, the camera's not as good as I want it to be. I've got some new kids, a new dog, and I really want to get some better photos. You can swap out the camera module. They sell you a camera module, which you just take yours off, swap yours in. Let's say that your USB-C plug stops working. Okay, great, throw the phone in the bin. No, you can actually swap out that bit there. Users can do this. They can order the bits from Fairphone, they can swap it out. And the idea is your phone is upgradable year on year, and you can just upgrade as much as you want. So it's modular, repairable. It supports worker welfare. So it's one of the things we know with mobile phones and technology in general. A lot of nasty things in there coming from mines. So the most you can reduce that by not having to throw your phone away, the better that is. So they prioritize social impact, and it tries to inspire broader change across the electronics industry too. So if you're into your tech, and I am, unfortunately, it's my kind of Achilles heel, you'll see that more and more tech companies are starting to develop products that you can actually repair. So gone are the days where you had to throw your iPhone away. You can now repair it to some degree. And that's because of some of the EU laws that have come in, like right to repair. So companies have to do that now. And companies like Fairphone, social enterprises such as those, have been pushing governments to do that. And so they deal with these SDGs across the bottom here. So quite a few of these will touch on the work that they do: decent work, responsible consumption, reducing inequalities, all that kind of thing. So a very interesting, innovative company there. So what about adapting to changes in environments, as I was talking before? Well, to do that, as a social enterprise, you need money, of course. You need cash. You need to be able to kind of raise that investment. And so Bridges are an investment management firm going again for about 20 years or so, I think this one here. And they focus on investing in companies and social organizations that generate financial returns alongside their positive social environmental outcomes. And so the first thing they ask you is, well, what are your kind of social environmental outcomes? What are your value you're creating there? And then they work backwards to that to kind of see if they would invest in you from a profit point of view. So they demonstrate how innovation allows social enterprises to respond to the kind of those needs of society, those change. They have very specific funds, so you can bid for them if you're a social enterprise for a fund for climate adaptation, for instance. You can talk about the particular issue you might be facing from a climate point of view, from your supply chain, let's say, and they will invest in that part of your business to help you transition across. So a very directed way of helping organizations, social enterprises, move forward. And then scaling impact. So how do we scale our positive impact that a social enterprise wants to create and send it out there into the world in a larger way? And Kiva are an interesting crowdfunding organization, again, about 20 years old now. And they're a microfinance organization. So they lend small amounts of money, or they facilitate the lending of small amounts of money to organizations and to individuals. And so one of the problems we have with microfinance is, you know, how do you access that? How do you get it? There's a high kind of cost of entry sometimes to do that. Traditional finance systems, traditional loans, they exclude low-income individuals. So we're talking not just about developing nations here, but also in the UK, you know, low-income individuals, students who can't raise any funding, for instance. It's hard. You can't go to a bank and get a loan, for instance. So what Kiva does is it's a peer-to-peer kind of lending organization. So you can go onto their website and you can browse people's profiles, and you'll find people saying, look, you know, I want to change my life. You know what I mean? I've had some problems in my life. I want to change it. I want to go and do some education. I can't afford to go and do education. And you could click on that and say, well, I'll help you. I'll fund you. And you can loan as much as $25. You know, it's the smallest amount you can give, all the way up to kind of hundreds of thousands to individual people, to companies. So it's kind of crowdfunding, sharing and scaling that impact. So you can go on today and you can have a look and say, look, there's somebody here I'm going to help change their life by funding them $20, $25. So it's a real good way of scaling that kind of impact across the world. And it's a technological approach, a technological solution to the age-old problem of poverty. So what about strategic support for those social enterprises? So again, how do we help them do these kind of things? Well, the areas that they're always kind of saying a social enterprise, social entrepreneur will tell you is access to finance is always a problem. Capacity, how do I build my capacity? How do I build my understanding of my learning? Lots of social entrepreneurs are not your traditional kind of business people that have been to university or want to go to university or want to learn that way. What policy areas do we work in to help kind of support this? And how do we build these collaborative networks? We'll talk about that in a minute. So access to finance, so strategic financial support, a bit like the Bridges Fund, is really, really important to help us grow and grow sustainability within social enterprises. Grants, impact investment, all of these kind of things that we need. But again, recently, this crowdfunding idea is really taking off and much more. So these platforms dedicated to helping social ventures provide alternative funding mechanisms for people who want to invest in a company that seems to be doing good. So again, this one here, Start Some Good, again, another crowdfunding platform, a little bit like Kiva, but this one's specifically designed to support social entrepreneurs, non-profits and change makers in scaling their impact-driven projects. So again, you can go on there as an individual and you can kind of look at these companies and you can become an investor for a small barrier to entry, a small amount of money. and really help so you can focus on a particular organization that you like or an area that you're interested in, and you can become a shareholder and essentially and fund them yourself. Capacity building, this is a bit where those of us who are academics come in, I guess, in universities. It's difficult for social enterprises to grow. Quite often they're startups with, one, maybe two people. There may be companies that retain them, are still very micro. And so the ability to go out and do training and management and learn your skills is quite a difficult thing to do. So there are lots of companies that do this. So Bridges for Enterprise is a non-profit itself. That was started by some entrepreneurs that realized after they'd had their other companies that they wanted to go back and help other people on that bridge up, if you like. And so their mission is to support social entrepreneurs in scaling their impact by equipping them with those basic business skills that they kind of need. What we know is that many social entrepreneurs lack access to that high quality training. They don't want to go to university, or they can't afford to. And so there are organizations that kind of will help to do that in a non-profit kind of way. From a business school point of view, what I was talking about at the start, I really believe that we need to have a more joined up approach to building entrepreneurship across business schools and across universities in general. Lots of other universities will have entrepreneurship programs, and that's fantastic. But actually, for me, entrepreneurship should be taught to every single student. Those kind of principles that you need as an entrepreneur are actually principles that I would argue that we all need, as we go through our careers, whether we be working for a traditional business or a local government or a charity or a social enterprise. So for me, entrepreneurship education should be something that we kind of imbue through everything that we do in a more strategic way of thinking. And again, policy and regulatory support. So there is actually quite a lot in the UK, I'm really glad to say, in support for entrepreneurs. But again, the entrepreneurs I speak to often don't understand or don't know this. It's a complex thing to navigate. But, there's things like the tax relief, for instance. There's a Public Services Social Value Act in 2012, which kind of changed the regulatory framework. There's relief for investors. So investors can get a bit of money back. So there's a bit of a bit of incentive for them to invest. And there's lots of different ways we can do that. And people like Social Enterprise UK, and I guess EUK as well, are really doing a lot of work to kind of advocate for what that social enterprises and entrepreneurs are different, and they need that kind of support, because the more we can support our social enterprises in particular, the more we can start to achieve the SDGs, the more we can do that, the more we can meet some of our governmental targets and goals, etc., etc. So it's a good thing to do. So policy and regulatory support is really, really important to help us support our social enterprises. And something that I'm very interested in is collaborative networks and the role of collaborative networks in helping. From a sustainability point of view, I'm really interested in this, and I have a doctoral student who's looking at this right now. What role do these kind of networks that exist have, like Business in the Community or the Entrepreneurs Forum in the Northeast, or the FSB or the CBI? So what role do these kind of organizations play in setting the kind of tone and understanding what sustainability is and sustainable and responsible business is? And as an organization, how do you access these, and what do they do for you, and how do you build this network? And from a social enterprise point of view, there are a couple of quite well-known networks. The first is Ashoka, of course. It's been around since 1980. And again, it helps to support entrepreneurs and individuals with solutions to social problems to build and scale their businesses. So again, it's a worldwide network, this. And the idea is that everyone can get together and be a change maker and learn from each other. And then the Skoll Foundation, very similar, again, been around since the late 90s, I think. Again, it's a philanthropic organization dedicated to driving large-scale change by investing in and connecting entrepreneurs. And the idea is that actually, a bit like SDG 17, Partnership for the Goals, we can expand our impact if we work together rather than just on our own. So lastly, a little bit about latest trends in social enterprise. So technological integration is the thing. AI at the moment, from a social enterprise point of view, is going to revolutionize the space. It's going to allow us to do more and do more quicker. And I think that's the most important thing. The ideas still need to come from humans, from people, but AI is going to help us really move that on in a fast way. And I think that's a real fertile area for research at the moment. How can social entrepreneurs use AI to kind of take a little bit of the burden away from them and help them focus on the things that they need to. Babylon's a great example. So this is again as a UK social enterprise. The idea was founded because they understood that access to healthcare wasn't great, especially in developing nations. You know, we can't just walk down and go into a doctor's. And again, in rural areas in the UK, it can be very hard to access health services. So the way that Babylon works is it's an AI-powered health service. Its platform provides virtual consultations, symptoms checks, health assessments. It's like triages. You can access it for free. You can download the app and you can get on there and you can access it. It'll give you some kind of ideas of maybe what you're looking at from the AI. You can consult the AI doctors, and then if you need to, it will put you in touch with a real doctor who can then kind of do the real work if need be. So it's an idea of trying to democratize access to health and try to triage that a little bit better using technology and AI. One of my favorites, Toast Ale, they make beer, but they were founded because they use waste from food waste to create beer. Predominantly bread, actually. So they collect bread and food waste from organizations and bakeries and large commercial entities, and they use that to brew their beer. So the idea is that they can reduce food waste globally, whilst also producing good beer, and it is good. I had to try some for research purposes, of course. And the aim is to reduce environmental impact and create social and economic opportunities in the way they go. They're run as a social enterprise, very innovative and solving those food waste problems. And then finally, I think, no, I've got one more example after this, Social Bite. Social Bite are a chain of sandwich shops, mostly run in Scotland, founded with the mission to end homelessness. So it employs homeless individuals and donates food and profits to support homeless services. But the point I wanted to make on this one is the importance of measuring impact when you are a social enterprise. So you can then go back and use that to show the impact that you're having from a sustainability point of view, but also take that back and help from a kind of an investment point of view. And there are various different ways you can do that. So they use social return on investment tools to work out actually that they are having the impact that they wanted to. They'd worked before, they say, for some social enterprises that didn't measure their impact, and they were skeptical about the impact that they were actually having. Great companies, but they were like, well, actually, are we doing what we need to do? So they decided to go down the route and get some third-party verification so they could then see what they were doing. And they are having a very good impact on homelessness in Scotland. And they partnered with the government relatively recently to kind of take them to the next stage to do that and expand outside of Scotland. And then Big Issue, again, a great example of scaling for growth. So the Big Issue was founded in 1991, a long time ago now. Again, the aim was to provide homeless individuals and vulnerable individuals with the opportunity to earn money by selling the street newspaper. And it grew from a single publication now to a social enterprise with much more impact. They have other things that they sell as well as the Big Issue nowadays. And again, the idea was they started very small, with a couple of people sellers, and then they brought this franchise kind of model, and now everybody can become their own kind of seller, and you see them everywhere still today. And I think they are something that we should be supporting. So always buy the Big Issue from one of your local vendors if you can. It's a good thing to do. Okay, so guiding innovation with the SDGs, just mindful of time, I've got a couple of more minutes to go. So the way that when I'm working with business, I help businesses think about this is we identify the core goals. So which SDGs can align with their mission and vision, helping them to focus. You don't have to deal with every SDG, it's pointless working on, I don't know, life on land or life underwater if you don't actually have anything to do with that. Let's say reducing plastic waste though. Life underwater would be a big area that you'd work because plastics in the ocean is one of the biggest challenges we face. You then integrate that into your strategy. So you focus down on the SDGs that you want to work on. You embed the targets into your business model and plans. So if you're working against poverty, you start to plan for, okay, so how are we going to do that? What are our targets? How much money are we going to generate? How many people are we going to kind of bring out of poverty, whatever that might be? You then work on your innovative solutions. So, okay, so how do we deal with that problem with people not being able to access finance? Okay, well, here's an idea. We could start an app, and how do we grow that? How do we scale that? And then at the end, the important thing which people often forget to do is you measure your impact. So again, you use the SDG indicators, which are embedded underneath each SDG to track your progress and demonstrate the impact that you are having through the work that you're doing. So just to conclude, so not on this slide, but social enterprise and sustainability are two halves of the same coin in my view. So social enterprises are a way, or if not the way, to kind of help us as create businesses that do deal with the big problems the SDGs are trying to solve. But we need to help them be more innovative. We need to help them support them strategically. We need to kind of help them understand the ways in which we can scale and grow. We need to empower them for the innovation that we do. I really believe that we need to be aligning with the SDGs and aligning with these core kind of metrics that we can help help them to understand what they're actually trying to achieve. And a bit of what Jill was saying there actually at the start, that collective responsibility that we all have as educators, I guess most of us on this call are, in order to kind of deal with these issues and help our students and our graduates and the businesses we work with come together to kind of deal with the big problems that we are facing in the world today. That's me done. I've put up my thing so you can contact me should you wish. I'm happy to take any questions, and I guess the slides will be shared around, so you can read all of the bits and pieces that I use to kind of help bring this together in your own time. I'll not read them all now. But other than that, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Alice. That was an insightful session. Of course, you cannot integrate all the 17 SDG into your social enterprise. So identify the key ones, then embed into your organizational strategy. Thanks a lot for that insightful session. So as I've put in the chat, if you have any question, please make note of them or just drop in the chat. We will be able to take questions at the end of the session. And also, we've got Dr. Alice's contact. Please, if you want to contact on LinkedIn, email, and all that. So we are on track with time, which is great. So the next thing, it's going to be 10 minutes break, comfort break, get yourself coffee. They will be expecting us all back by 11. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Dr. Sina, please, is it okay to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Bafemi, please?
Yes, so sorry, just trying to bring my cup of tea upstairs. Right, okay, so our next speaker is our esteemed colleague, Dr. Obafemi, and I would like to hand it over. So it's a talk by a social enterprise expert and providing a practical and informative session by our good colleague, Dr. Obafemi, sharing insight and strategies for fostering innovation within social enterprises. So without wasting time, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Obafemi. Thank you.
Thank you, Sina. Let me just share my screen first. Hopefully it should work. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can see. I think everyone else can see. Great.
Okay, all right. So thank you, Dr. Sina, for that introduction, and also a big shout out to Enterprise UK and my dear colleagues at Teesside University International Business School for organizing this event and inviting me to speak. I want to I'll quickly talk briefly about social enterprise. Alex has done a fantastic job about introducing it, so mine will just be super summary, and then share some success stories, and then look briefly at innovation and talk briefly from a managerial standpoint now about what I call incremental innovation and design thinking, and then close. So I'm like Dr. Sina has mentioned, this is a practical and information section. My name is Obafemi Olekama. I'm business performance expert. I've worked in the industry, and just like Alex mentioned in his introduction, academia is my second kind of work experience. I'm currently senior lecturer at Teesside University International School. And when I look at sustainable or even social enterprise, I look at it from the standpoint of you want to do well by doing good. And the way I generally look at it from the managerial standpoint is there's a need to actually separate and make sure that there is a clear distinction when we talk about charities, for-profit organizations, because centrally, just a quick reminder here that social enterprise actually is business. They trade to make money. And what the difference is, they trade to tackle social problems and to improve communities, people's lives. They sell goods. However, they plow back whatever profit they make into that mission that and whatever they do have a measurable impact. And just quickly, this data is from a social enterprise website. Currently, there is 131,000 social enterprises contributing 60 billion to the economy, about 2.3 million. It's working in that space. However, what is critical for what they do at this point is that they actually outperform some of these for-profit organizations when it comes to things like reducing inequality and even building a more inclusive economy. And the other thing that is very important about social enterprise is their vision. When they are crafting their vision statement, there is a particular world that they intend to create that guides the vision, the mission, and even the value. So the why, the how, and what they do is really, really embedded in the fact that this is this social problem we want to tackle it. And then I want to share some success stories, starting with this Tarem Services Limited. It's an organization that was set up in 1999 with just £10,000 from Prince Trust. This year, 2024, they are celebrating their 25th anniversary. And all they have done all through their existence is the business of cleaning. And they clean offices, construction welfare, house clearing, waste management, school cleaning, everything about, but they focused on cleaning. And today, they are they are holding out in their own against all these for-profit companies that are also in the cleaning business. So on their website, they have all these accolades that they have garnered over the years. So I would just suggest, please visit their website and you can see what they've done from 1999, and they're still waxing strong as we speak. The next social enterprise that I really am passionate about, this particular one, it's called Bounce Back. Bounce Back is there helping to reintegrate prisoners into the society immediately they are coming out from having served their sentence. That's a particular program that they designed specifically for people who, for instance, have served, let's say, 12 months in jail and all that. As they are coming out, they are there with open arms to make sure that they get integrated immediately back into society. And that has a lot of value even for the street is safer. And this Bounce Back works with Departments of Work and Pension. They work with Ministry of Justice. and a lot of local authorities. And they are doing fantastic job. Like what you are seeing on the screen, they give people job immediately so that they can get back into routine. And coming nearer home to Middlesbrough here, we have our own Connection Community Cafe. Now, their mission is they want to ensure that everybody that lives in Middlesbrough can go out and eat out without worrying about the cost. So they serve excellent cuisine and for just £5. So when you visit Middlesbrough, please don't forget we have a social enterprise that is doing a real good work. And in the process of doing that, they are creating jobs for the youth. And so they are also helping to reduce the unemployment and then boost the economy of Middlesbrough. And then a little bit more data from one of the projects that I think it's an Erasmus program done with another social enterprise organization called Social Up. So some of this data came from them. But what is interesting for me from this data is having given the good parts on the other side, they started to look at the managerial aspect that when it comes to entrepreneurial spirit, it's a bit of a challenge. And then the business model is another thing that needs to be carefully looked at by social enterprises business owners. Most of the time, people that start this organization come out from either public sector or some employment, and they are reliant on government. And when it comes to designing new products to enter new markets, it becomes something of a worry. So those are the areas for the business owners in the social enterprises space really needs to look at. And it's important they have little knowledge about things like design thinking or incremental management. So the next thing I want to quickly look at is talking about social innovation then. How can we help? So the first thing I want to quickly mention is to clarify, just in a simple language, to just say that this social innovation might sound like such a big word, but in actual fact, it manifests in various forms. Like Alex was trying to show us that phone that that you can recycle some of the parts, and it can just be business models, creating new policies or programs just to ensure that whatever is designed has a tangible impact on individual lives and community well-being. So I'll quickly just talk about incremental innovation. I'm also mindful of the time I've been given. So when we talk about incremental innovation, we're just talking about the social enterprise business owner doing small changes, incrementally managing some little things in terms of looking at existing services, for instance, and how can I improve? Those small changes, like improvement, usually boost performance, functionality, and overall user experience. And then, for example, most of the social enterprise that I've been involved with, and those that I visit on a regular basis, I noted that when you go into the shops and the store and the place of business, they will have just the employee at the back of the counter and other people doing one or two things. However, simply introducing a digital checkout by the side could result to repeat patronage by customers, resulting in even improved sales turnover and increased profitability. So this little innovation that can help improve the day-to-day management of social enterprise. And then we now look at the issue of design thinking. From my perspective, I'm looking at design thinking as a kind of moving some of those ideas they have to where we can actually put it in a way it becomes something like a non-linear kind of thinking. We can now visualize and then try to bring our ideas to life so that it can help to overcome not just conventional problems. So one of the way I will suggest for us to look at it, practitioners and even colleagues, is that when it comes to social enterprise, design thinking should be a human-centered tool. For instance, if we look at the diagram on the screen, you'll see that as a person in the middle, a social enterprise should start out by looking, this product that I'm thinking about, will it be useful to anybody? Will it be something that people want to use? Before even thinking about a viability or the visibility. But the for-profit business, first of all, we conduct a visibility study, and then they start talking about viability, and before they start talking about the user. So it's important we look at it from that human-centered perspective once it's a social enterprise endeavor. And the British Design Council actually introduced this gold standard for design thinkers to use, this framework. The first version they introduced in 2004 and brought in a modified version in 2021. A simplified version of that model is what's on the screen now. You can see that it's easy to identify, okay, what is that problem? What is it we want to accomplish? And then we do some research around it. We refine whatever it is that is the problem. And we now get into the problem definition, and then we start designing something that will be useful. Importantly, the whole essence of this design thinking is a process for making successful product. We can finish designing something. Once we find out that it's not good, people are not going to use it, we start all over again until we find that product that once introduced to the community will really fly off the shelves. And then at the heart of everything I've been trying to say to manage a social enterprise successfully is this entrepreneurial mindset. One of the key things that came out from the data from that European project was that entrepreneurs, they don't have that entrepreneurial spirit. And it is critical for that to be the case, because if you are not entrepreneurially minded, it is difficult to run a business that needs to make money before it will now solve the problem it is set out to do. For instance, the professor, that's a pro-vice chancellor at the Queensland University of Technology had a quote. He said, an entrepreneurial mindset helps leaders to create value by recognizing and acting on opportunities, making decisions with limited information, and remaining adaptable and resilient in conditions that are uncertain and complex. So the business is complex, but we need people who can be resilient, just like Tarem is doing in the last 25 years. They have been there. There must have been ups and downs, but they have been able to persevere, and they are doing very well. So social enterprises must see this as one of the key things that is necessary. For instance, if we want to set up a cafe, there are minimum things that must be done, just like the for-profit organization. Who are my competitors? An example is the grid on the screen. All this has to be taken care of to enable us to design something that will be profitable, able to make money, but at the same time be useful to the community that we want to serve. And just on a final note, most of the social enterprises, like I said, that I've engaged with and the ones I've participated in, they have started using the issues around design thinking and incremental innovation, albeit they stop short at embracing the whole approach, like the AI thing we have started talking about today. How can they get into using AI to even make more progress in what they do. So these are some of the thoughts that I want to leave with us, practitioners and colleagues. And once again, thank you, the organizers, for inviting me to present. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Obafemi. Very thought-provoking and insightful. We have time for question and answer, so we would appreciate if you stay with us. Our next speaker is our esteemed principal lecturer in Enterprise and Knowledge Exchange at Teesside University Business School, Dr. Susan Hag, with years of experience in graduate employability and helping businesses grow at regional and national level. Susan is particularly interested in grassroots philanthropy and why individuals choose to give within their local areas. And she has a proven track record in social impact and community engagement. So without further ado, I would like to pass to Susan to start her presentation. Thank you.
Well, first of all, wow, Sina, what an introduction. Not quite sure I can follow that, but can I just check, can everyone see my screen? Because I've been having technical issues this morning. Yeah, brilliant. Yes. Okay, we're good to go. Thank you very much for inviting me to come along and speak today. I'll try and keep this now within 10 minutes, but we'll see how we go. First of all, there's been some brilliant sessions, and Alex, I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points that you made in the keynote, if that's okay, when you talked about the SDGs and the lack of awareness in businesses. And do businesses have to deal with all of them? And of course, the answer to that is absolutely not. You also referred to the Public Service Social Value Act, which was obviously one of the first pieces of legislation that was brought in worldwide to try and get public bodies to think about social value as well as their economic and environmental responsibility, and when they were commissioning some services. So this session very much builds upon the points that you made initially. And this session is around just some pieces of research that are within the last few years that I've come across, which link back to everything that you've said this morning. So hopefully it will help colleagues to start thinking about different areas of research and different topics to look at in terms of emerging themes. And nothing is happening. There it is. So one of the emerging themes of research is about impact reporting and measurement. And I was quite interested when I looked at this because I found it in the State of Social Enterprise 2021 report. What was interesting in terms of the economy was that 74% made a profit or broke even last year, which I think is really encouraging. When you're thinking about the current picture, though, one of the things, whilst that's an encouraging statistic and it's so important in delivering change, the areas where social enterprises have broke even or made a profit are also likely to be in those areas of under-resourced and deprived communities. So I suppose you could make the assumption that it stands to reason that might be the case in under-resourced communities, but even so, 74% is still high. And environmentally, 84% of social enterprises believe in buying products that are socially responsible, and I think that's only going to grow as years go by, when awareness of the importance of societal impact and social enterprises becomes even more prevalent in society. And I think also with the young people now that are coming into society, they place much more importance on societal and social value than perhaps people from the earlier generations, because it has much more impact on their lives. A lot has been referred to this morning in terms of the use of AI and technology. So I've actually bundled these two together because technology and digital innovation is clearly a massive research area. And I've included some examples of papers that I've come across when I've been doing a little bit more reading around this. And I think this whole idea around social and commercial mission is a fascinating area for us to start to explore. And the fact that now entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs are creating these e-entrepreneurial businesses. And the paper that I read from Javid et al. In 2020 was a classic example of that. And also how we can use innovation to drive best practice and to drive values. And I think it's been mentioned a couple of times with regards to the use of AI for social good. Some of the challenges that social enterprises face, however, in that area, is that a lot of the AI that's developed at the moment has been developed by commercial organisations for commercial usage. And there isn't actually that much at present in terms of AI that's been specifically developed for social enterprise. And there's one of the other areas as well that I think we need to consider is that there's a whole lack of capital, because if we think about social enterprises, and Simon, you alluded to the idea around profitability within social enterprises. If you are a social enterprise, the chances are that your main priority is to do social good. But if you have to try and couple that with investing in infrastructure and technology, that can also prove difficult. And also the research would suggest that there is a lack of adoption of technology within social enterprises. So again, I think that's something that's going to be very, very prevalent in the years to come. And Obafemi, you've alluded to this in your session in terms of machine learning in response to driving things like climate change, and how social enterprises now need to start being a little bit more experimental in terms of developing products and services. I think the main area for me, though, is this whole idea around collaborations and partnerships, because that's the bit that, in terms of the research that I carried out as part of my PhD, which was around the grassroots philanthropy, it's about what motivates people to either invest in social enterprises, to be involved in social enterprises, to create a social enterprise. And it's about that whole idea about relationship. And it's about making sure that we have these cross-sector collaborations and try and reduce some of the boundaries that take place, and also these cross-sector partnerships. And I think quite a lot of the conversation this morning has been fascinating around how us as educators can work more closely with social enterprises. And I'd just like to touch upon a presentation that Bemi and I gave last week at the CABS conference, whereby we worked with a local social enterprise in the Tees Valley called 13 Housing. And 13 Housing have some real significant societal problems within their housing stock. And what our students actually had the opportunity to do was work on a critical problem for them, such as antisocial behaviour, inclusion into communities, the use of green space, digital poverty, food poverty, and try and think about ways that we can actually support the social enterprise to provide solutions for their residents that live in their communities. Because if they're able to provide solutions, then a lot of these problems will not disappear, but they will become reduced over time. And I think there's, we've already talked about the fact that the next time we do this, we're going to conduct an evaluation report and turn that into a piece of research specifically in this area with one organisation as a case study. So in terms of the three types of collaboration, there's the philanthropic collaboration, which was aligned to my own PhD, the transactional collaboration, whereby, and I think it was Alex that alluded to this morning, you can lend money to somebody that wants to invest in their own future, but it might be quite transactional because you wouldn't necessarily have a relationship with that person. And then there's the integrative collaborative opportunities, which is when partners come together from different sectors such as education and housing. And in terms of the language, I think the language is changing, and the research would suggest that the language is changing. It's becoming much more collaborative and participative as opposed to transactional. We know, and from what Obafemi's just said, people that think entrepreneurially, there is a specific mindset attached to that. And I just wanted to throw this in there because it sprung to mind when he was speaking. If you haven't had an opportunity to look at the Get2 test to measure your entrepreneurial mindset and how enterprising you are, or perhaps use it with students. I've used it several times with our undergraduate and postgraduate students, and it's actually quite it's quite revolutionary in some respects. So if you have a look at that, this all sits around leadership and purpose, and it all sits around the mission and culture of social enterprises. Funding and investment is absolutely massive. We've already discussed crowdfunding in terms of Alex's presentation this morning, and the importance of innovation and impact investment. But there's also this whole idea about scaling social enterprise without compromising mission. And I just wanted to touch on a point that Simon had put in the chat, and Obafemi's already referenced this organisation in Middlesbrough, because what Simon said was about profitability in social enterprise and is it sustainable without cash? Well, Recovery Connections, which is now a charity in the Tees Valley, they actually started off as a social enterprise in 2008. And it was founded by 3 members of the recovery community. And at the time, they were completely reliant on grants. But in 2011, they actually achieved charitable status because of the work that they'd done within the community. It's a charity that's actually 90% of their staff are in recovery. And if you added all of their staff together, they would have over 400 years of collective recovery between them. So their starting point was mission-led, and it was about doing the right thing for the people that relied on their services. And as a consequence of that, so making a profit at the time didn't resonate in terms of the conversation. It was all about supporting the community. But as a consequence of the services that they've provided, actually the revenue came in afterwards. So it's in slight contradiction to what you alluded to in the chat, Alex. And I just thought it was a really interesting one to throw in, because they've gone from 2011 into a charity, and they now have a turnover of over £4 million and have opened 8 centres across the northeast. So I suppose I would suggest that it is actually possible to think about the social impact first, and then think about the profitability, which comes second, and the whole idea that actually it is sustainable without cash, because organisations like this were literally started on a shoestring. That's a list of the references in terms of where I found all of this information from. And I'm sorry that I've had to speak at the speed of light, but my end time was 10 minutes past 12, and it's now 11 minutes past. So I'll just pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. I think it was very insightful and comprehensive. You touch on many aspects of the phenomenon you're talking today, very insightful and thought-provoking. So we're moving to the Q&A. So from the beginning, we had the keynote by Alex, and then we went to the breakout rooms, and then followed by 2 presentations, Dr. Obafemi and Dr. Susan Hack. So any question from the audience? If there is anything, you can put in the chat, but we can start. I can start with the one from Simon, which I think is answered through your presentation in a way, Susan. But in case, Simon, what I read in the chat is, be valuable to start a conversation on profitability and social enterprise. Nothing is sustainable without cash, perhaps. This is why social enterprises remain a hard sell, so question marks. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Look, this is just my experience. Obviously, we're enterprise educators in an academic setting, and we spend a lot of time in this sort of the luxury of academicizing, if you like, startups. And I think it's a dangerous place to be, because we also deal with a lot of young people who are very they're very geared up to starting their own business. They see that maybe their degree won't lead them to a job anymore, and they're looking to really diversify their skill set. And they see the entrepreneurial skills that we teach as something that's very, very valuable. I think when it comes to and you know, we do talk about the sustainable development goals. We put them in, we get them to build businesses based on those goals. But what we find is that when these founders are putting their pitch decks together and they're putting their finances together, the link between that and the sustainable aspects of the business it isn't always the most appetizing thing for investors. Even though we say that investors are all looking for sustainable aspects to the business, it's at the end of the day, it's how innovative this business is, how scalable it is. You know, because it's a social enterprise, very difficult to prove just how scalable it can be. These are all the things we're coming up against. And let's face it, it's a cost of living crisis out there. When these young people want to make money, well, we all want to make money. So being sustainable and having all these lovely values, which we all want to save the world, they just don't seem to line up. That's just where I'm at with it. And hopefully you guys can help untangle that for me.
Okay, anyone would like to add anything on that? Alex?
I would say it's about the examples that you give your students. You know, when we're talking about I don't know, founders and CEOs, you know, you could use, what's his name? Blake McCoskey, I can never pronounce it. He's the guy who founded Tom's, you know, from a very small beginning, and now they're a huge global company. And that guy is worth, you know, more than CEOs of for-profit businesses. You know, so if they want to go down that route, absolutely fine. I've got no problem with people making money and making a profit, as long as the activities that they do are actually providing social value as well. You know, and I don't think the two are incompatible. And I think you're absolutely right, Simon, that sometimes there's a perception that the two are incompatible, that you have to, you know, to make a good living in a business, you've got to be in old-fashioned bad business and make a profit and be in bed with the devil, all the rest of it. It's not true. And I think we need to be debunking that. So when we are giving examples to students of successful business people, we need to be mindful that we're being inclusive. And I mean that from a EDI point of view. So, you know, making sure that we're showing that, you know, business leaders come from every kind of gender, every sect, every ethnicity, every country, but also that actually you could be very successful if that's what you want in terms of your personal net worth, or you can go the completely opposite way and you do it just because, you know, for different altruistic reasons. And there's a spectrum in between. So I just think we have to be open and honest with our students about that. It's not a dirty thing.
I would completely agree with that, and I suppose a lot of it comes down to personal values, because if the individual has a high level of personal value and personal integrity and wants to make some kind of social contribution as well as making a profit, there's nothing at all wrong with that. I think it's just been really clear in terms of what their why is. And the purpose behind the organisation. And I know quite a lot of the apprentices that I work with like the way that Simon Sinek presents all of his ideas around organisational purpose, leaders eat last, start with why, and all of that kind of literature, because it's actually really quite accessible. And it's not written in such an academic lens that it's beyond the understanding of people that are maybe coming into education for the first time as first generation students. But I think Alex also alluded to B Corp in the northeast. You know, the northeast of England has lots of organisations that are now trying to get B Corp status, and I think in our area, this is something that I've seen emerging quite rapidly over the last couple of years in terms of people thinking about their social impact, and you know, from students as well. And I think it is about debunking the myths, and it's about positioning, and it's about messaging, but also finding companies like Tom's Shoes that are relevant to students, that they can associate themselves with, because it means something to them, as opposed to looking at some of the big, you know, some of the large corporates that mean absolutely nothing to the average student in the street, because they've never heard of them, or they can't see any association with them at all.
Thank you, Susan. Natalie, in the chat, I can see two questions from you. One on the mindset and how the word social enterprise is perceived, and another one on unintended consequences. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
The mindset, I think it's a mindset that I also share sometimes, that I sort of don't believe the third sector should exist, because we should be solving all these problems by business. And And when I'm supporting other businesses, for example, there's a CIC I was in conversation with, and I said to them, look, I think you need to consider being a charity. And they said, yeah, we've realized that ourselves, but we don't want to be a charity because we don't want to fall into that system of being another charity. We want to make this work by having a for-profit stream. And the third sector, some of the organizations just repelling this notion of traditional business and what that means to them and their attempt to fight that system is one mindset. And then there's the other mindset of people that just haven't unpacked that awareness of the power that business can have, really, and how they have the ability to apply some of that power as well, in that sense of you know, you may be just one person, but you're either one person in a large organization, a small organization, or creating your own organization, and all of that is incremental positive change. So there's a kind of huge space to unravel there, which in my head I'm also unraveling at the same time as trying to get other people to think about that too. And then I guess the unintended consequences, I'm always trying to buy consciously, buy ethically. I own a pair of Tom's shoes, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's articles of, I forget now, because as soon as you think you've tapped into something good, you always hear that there's that unintended consequence. And even trying to do your own supply chain transparency work, you know, I tend to lean towards B Corp because I'm thinking, oh God, you know, if I try and unpack this, let's hope B Corp is unpacking it and promising to. Yeah, so Tom's, you know, it's that thing of how do you put that in balance, and how do you reconcile with that, and how do you share those messages when you're like, well, actually, here's a model that did loads of good stuff, but actually on the other side, I think they might be potentially damaging other economies by sending their excess stock there or putting it into landfill. And so you have these examples, and then maybe you don't. I don't know. Yeah, so it's not a conclusive thought. It's more if I'm trying to and wishing and aspiring myself to inspire other people to believe that they can make change, yet I'm overwhelmed by the whole process and thinking, how do I make incremental change on a kind of daily basis?
Thank you very much. Rob, I think our 10 minutes for Q&A is over now, so I'm ready to, unless there is another question, or we can borrow another 2 minutes from Rob. If not, we can close or pass it to Rob. No question. Okay, Rob, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody, to our speakers, to Sina and to Bemi for organising today's session. I've personally found it absolutely fascinating, as the head of a CIC as well. It's just been really interesting, and I think that sort of tension between all of the business obligations that we've been talking about today and the need to do social good is just a fascinating area to be in. And I think as enterprise educators as well, it's going through this process of working out exactly where we sit in terms of the service that we're offering to students and to graduates. And I think, as I think Suzanne was saying, you know, in terms of young people who are coming through now, I think there is this much heightened sense of a sort of social need and wanting to do good for the community and for the world. But then obviously it's that delicate balance then between the profit side of things as well and running a sustainable business. So I think it's been a fascinating discussion today, and I hope that everyone who's on the call has got a lot out of it. So in terms of some of the sort of logistical stuff now, we'll be sharing the slides. If speakers are happy to share those with me and can send them through, that would be great. And we'll circulate those. We'll also send through a link to the video recording for today as well, once that's edited and uploaded onto YouTube. So we'll share that with you all. We'll also be sending the inevitable survey, so that you can share your reflections on today. It's about a 2-minute survey, but any sort of feedback you can give us obviously helps us to then look at future events as well. So without further ado, I think that's it from me. We've kept to time. We're even finishing a little bit early, which is amazing. So thanks once again to all of our speakers, to all our delegates, and to the team at Teesside as well for bringing everything together. I don't know if there's anything else that Bemi or Sina want to say before we head off.
Just big thank you, and for all the shout out to all of the speakers, keynote speakers, and colleagues, and all the respected audience. So thank you very much. Bemi?
I think that will be it. Just to say thank you very much, everybody, our keynote speaker, the speakers, and all our participants. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much.
Thank you.
In the notes that Suzanne could have talked for longer. We could have another few minutes now. We'll do that in the sequel. We'll do another event. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye now.